At the moment, the world is entering a rare moment of theatrical absurdity and deadly seriousness in equal measure. It's almost Shakespearean, in Shakespeare, where to emphasize the depth of the drama, Shakespeare often puts a comic moment just before it, like when Cleopatra kills herself. There's the clown who brings the asps, and there's some rather crude jokes about the worm that the clown has brought in the bowl of figs, and the same thing in the Scottish play with the fellow, the gatekeeper, just before the death of the king is revealed, and it's something that I suppose Shakespeare learnt from the Bacchae, the play by Euripides, and even there's this extraordinary scene where Dionysus plays a sort of comic moment where he dresses up Pentheus in women's clothing, and then sends Pentheus off to his inevitable death. And we're getting something like that at the moment, where you've got comedy and the horror of war side by side. On May the 30th, today, Russia's ambassador to the United States, Vasily Nebenzia, declared that Moscow is in principle prepared to consider a ceasefire in Ukraine. But, and this is a big but, I mean, it's a but that you could drive your tank through. It's a massive but. Only if the West ceases arms supplies to Kyiv and Ukraine halts mobilization. That, in short, is not. It's not a peace offering. It's a pause button for a regime that's running out of time, troops, and credibility. But it's interesting. It's got the smack of desperation about it. It comes at a time when the Kremlin's mythos, that of an indomitable Russia led by a man of granite resolve, is disintegrating. Maybe more people than just me think that Putin is in a Smeg free fridge, icicled up to the eyelashes. Maybe more people than I have noticed that his eye color has changed. This disintegration, not only on the battlefield but in the digital sphere, in development almost too grotesquely comic to believe, Russian courts have now banned memes comparing Vladimir Putin to Adolf Hitler, calling them terrorist propaganda. When your regime is terrified of photoshopped moustaches, the aura of unmistakable power is, let's suggest, perforated. This isn't simply about satire. The desperation is real. Russia's battlefield losses, economic fatigue, the growing internal dissent have weakened its position. Its much vaunted spring offensive has yielded minimal gains at great cost. Its alliance with North Korea has turned from embarrassment to necessity. The myth of the mighty Russian bear now looks more like a cornered animal snapping out in fear and turning to its friends for help. So what is Moscow really doing? Is it offering peace? Well, definitely not. Is it offering terms that guarantee Ukrainian surrender by any other means? Nebenzia's statement at the United Nations requiring a halt to Western arms shipments and Ukrainian mobilization amounts to demanding Ukraine voluntarily disarm while Russia reloads. But even as they speak of peace, Russian forces are intensifying air and drone strikes against civilians in Kharkiv, in Odessa, in Kyiv. And yet Russia intends to present a ceasefire memorandum in Istanbul on June the 2nd, one that Ukraine still hasn't seen. And they haven't seen it, nor has Turkey, nor has the UN. The delay is strategic. If Ukraine walks away, Russia will accuse Kyiv of sabotaging peace. If Ukraine attends unprepared, Russia will dominate the narrative. The trap is as old as diplomacy itself. Propose the unacceptable, and when it's rejected, claim the moral high ground. But this time, there's this language of desperation surrounding it. And look not so much for what is said, but for what is not said. Ukraine, of course, quite wisely sees through a lot of this rubbish. The Foreign Minister, Andrei Sybiha, describes the Russian remarks as a slap in the face to those genuinely pursuing peace, and he's right. Ukraine's own memorandum, already submitted, calls for a ceasefire not just on land but also in the air and at sea, underpinned by international monitoring, a serious proposal. Russia's response, in contrast, is all theatre and no substance. And President Zelensky, speaking with Turkish officials, made clear that Kyiv is ready for talks, but only if Russia is prepared to engage in good faith. As he put it, Russia is doing everything to make the next meeting in Istanbul fruitless. It's already rejected the venue of the Vatican. The Kremlin, it seems, is less interested in peace than in posturing. So why now? Russia's insistence on a ceasefire and ceasefire terms is not a sign of strength, but of strain. The once feared Russian war machine is overstretched. Morale is low. Recruitment increasingly depends on coercion. The economy is limping under sanctions, and the growing ridicule of Putin, from memes to the streets, is being met with repression, because satire, unlike propaganda, reveals the truth. And the Kremlin's desire for a ceasefire with strings is also designed to play on Western fatigue. It aims to fracture Allied support for Ukraine, to muddy the moral waters and to coax cautious leaders into compromise. So the West needs to be careful not to mistake this sort of theatrical diplomacy for genuine compromise. Russia doesn't want peace, it wants pause. And as Turkey's foreign minister put it, we're approaching a turning point, not in the war alone, but in the credibility of global diplomacy, and also in the stamina of the Kremlin. So what next? Ukraine is quite right to insist on transparency. The memorandum must be delivered before the Istanbul meeting. No surprises, no games, and the West must stand firm. No weapons pause, no rhetorical backpedaling, no second guessing. If the Kremlin seeks peace, let it begin with truth, not propaganda, not hostage diplomacy, and not ultimata masquerading as some sort of negotiations. And as for the memes, the moustaches, and the censors of Omsk, they may silence the protesters, but they cannot suppress perception. And what's interesting is these protests are taking place. When a regime begins banning jokes, it's no longer feared, it's ridiculed. And ridicule, like repression, cannot be shot or jailed. It spreads quietly, relentlessly, irreversibly. The cracks are showing. I thought it would be remiss not to show you a few of the pictures that have been going around. Here's one. And as for the cracks that are showing, it does slightly remind me of the rather wonderful story. I don't know if you remember it on Parkinson. Dame Edna Everage was being interviewed with Judi Dench and Sharon Osbourne. And she told this extraordinary story about, I think it was about Harrison Ford, and how she acted as a sort of matchmaker, and how the key detail that attracted this person to Harrison Ford was crack. And Parkinson says, "Do you mean crack cocaine?" And she says, "Oh no, builder's crack, the little groove." And that's the sort of crack that I'm afraid is showing in the Putin carapace, the crack of contempt, and I think Dame Edna Everage is vicious but well-meaning. And I think the people who are putting up the taunts about Putin are finding the opportunity to mock this man, to mock him. And I think we should join in. I think we should find every opportunity to mock the man in the fridge. Smeg forever. and let those cracks develop.